More on this. The ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California, is joining us. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Good to be with you, Wolf.
Do you know, will the House Intelligence Committee have access to this information as well?
Well, we won't have it in terms of getting the information directly from Bob Mueller. It would require us to get information through our own investigation. I do think that many of the financial issues are within the scope of what we need to investigate. My primary concern, though, is an allegation that you didn't discuss just yet, and that is the issue of potential money laundering through the Trump organization. That is, I think, among more serious allegations, because what concerns me is, frankly, anything that could continue to be leverage the Russians might have over the president. Now, we don't know that that's the case, but I do think prudently we have to find out, because the Russians have laundered money as a way of influence in Europe and the Caucasus and elsewhere, whether that was also one of the vectors in which they sought to use their active measures campaign.
Well, tell us, this is new information. Tell us a little bit more about your concern now about money laundering. Give us a little bit more on that if you can.
Well, this has been a concern all along, and that is the Russians, we have seen as part of their playbook, have used in Europe and elsewhere a variety of tactics. They've used hacking and dumping, as they clearly did here. They've used social media, paid social media trolls and bots, as we now see quite clearly here. They have also used financial entanglement as a way of exerting influence. And of course, there was a long pattern of Russian money laundering generally, akin to what your reporters just described, that special counsel may be looking at with respect to either Mueller or Flynn. So I think that's an issue that also has to be tracked down to see whether there's anything there that we need to be concerned about that could, again, direct U.S. policy in a way that's not in U.S. interests, but owing more to Russian leverage.
Well, it's one thing for the Russians to engage in money laundering. It's another thing if there are officials in the Trump organization engaging in money laundering. Is there any evidence to back up that assertion?
Well, I can't go into any of the evidence. All I can say is these are the range of issues that have to be investigated, that I think we need to thoroughly vet, because we have seen now a great many of the tactics that the Russians have used elsewhere were employed during the 2016 election. And we need to make sure that we do our due diligence and determine, is there any leverage the Russians have? Is there anything that would explain the president's policy towards Russia, which in many respects has been baffling to, I think, both Democrats and Republicans. So this is, I think, a necessary part of our investigation.
Do you think the special counsel, Robert Mueller, needs access to President Trump's tax returns?
Well, he may very well. You know, I think that what the special counsel is likely to do is to follow the money, as reporters were indicating, follow the money when it comes to those that are around the president or were around the president, like Manafort or Flynn, but as well as others within the Trump organization. If the Trump organization was having trouble getting legitimate financing for its real estate, and the Russians were looking for a place to launder their money through real estate, and the two came together, that I think would be very much within the scope of Bob Mueller's investigation. So I do think Bob Mueller ought to follow the money wherever it leads, and it may ultimately lead to the president's tax return.
Do tax returns, if there is a special counsel investigation involving access to IRS documents, tax returns specifically, would they normally also be made available to your committee or other House or Senate committees?
They wouldn't be mailed. They would not be made available to our committee simply because they were made available to Bob Mueller. We have had a practice generally where documents are made available to the House Investigative Committee. They're made available to the Senate and vice versa. But that's not the case of things that are produced to special counsel. So alone, that would not be enough.
As you know, a longtime confidant of President Trump's Roger Stone appeared before your committee today. Last year, Stone appeared to have advanced knowledge of the release of hacked emails from the Clinton campaign manager, John Podesta, tweeting this, quote, "Trust me, it will soon the president's time in the barrel. It will soon be Podesta's, trust me, it will soon be the Podesta's time in the barrel, hashtag crooked Hillary." Stone says he told your committee today he had no advanced knowledge of the Podesta hack. Did his testimony give you any reason to believe he isn't telling the truth?
You know, I don't want to characterize his testimony. We've tried to avoid doing that with other witnesses, and I want to do the same here. I will say that, one of the key takeaways from the interview today was his unwillingness to answer some of the most important questions that we had concerning his relationship with Julian Assange and the potential use of an intermediary. Mr. Stone has said publicly, and all I can comment really is on what he said publicly. At times he said publicly that he was in communication with Assange, and the implication was directly. At times he has said that he was in communication through an intermediary. I think both the chairman and I are in agreement that we need complete answers to the questions we asked today, and if we can't get those voluntarily, we'll have to subpoena him to come back.
Stone made another claim during the hearing today on Twitter. He said this. He said, this is a Stone tweet, Rep. Adam Schiff, Rep. Speer, both claim in my hearing today that DNC did turn their email server over to the FBI, contrary to Comey testimony. Here's the question. Is that true?
Mr. Stone, I think, misstates the discussion that we had, and I'll have to leave it at that, but I don't think that was an accurate representation of what was discussed.
Well, can you tell us, did the DNC hand over the survey? The server, I should say?
The issue, Wolf, is whether the DNC was asked to turn over the server or whether the DHS or FBI was given the copy of the DNC server and that satisfied what they needed. So there is some difference of opinion potentially on whether there was ever a formal request for the server, and that's something that the committee is looking into.
Let's take a quick break. There's a lot more happening. There's a lot more questions we need to ask you, Congressman. We'll resume our coverage